Hello again, this is Mr. Loy, your friendly D&T teacher. In our last video, you saw that I've actually used a real French curve and make rendered sketches, one on the right and one on the left. I also distinguished the use of outlining and with the flicking method, and of course where to apply the darker tone for the contrasting. Now on the right hand side, the last time you watched, it was a little bit faint. So what I did was I added another time the surface, alright, and of course areas that are dark, I use a slightly darker dark blue color pencil and I run through the surfaces again. And of course you should be able to have the confidence to apply such technique by now. Just want to show you the flicking method, alright, to kind of like show the shine. So over here you can actually rest your rule and you just flick out like that, okay, and then you change to another direction, you flick out, and last but not least, maybe just one more here, okay. You can have like 2 or 3 strokes to show the shine. Alright, before I proceed further, I just want to remind all that you will need to sharpen your color pencils so that the tips are pretty sharp. Then you can do very distinct toning and the outlining and so on. Okay? Now this weekend you'll be wondering what you should be doing with this piece of paper for 1/4. What you do is you select your choice of color for your contextual use to be applied here. Page 17, most of you have completed at least one. So for those who have only done one side and you still have a empty space on page 17, please sketch a second one, maybe from another perspective. What about those few who have not completed? Alright, obviously you have to complete page 17 before you do the contextual use on this A3 loose sheet of paper. So you basically is going to show this over here. Alright, so to save time, you just imagine that this thing is actually applied here. And in my last video for contextual use, the 4-minute 40-second one, I mentioned about you are able to, if you have the time, please sketch the back view, because this shows how you're going to attach the circuitry, such as this button cell holder, how the wiring is done, and how the LED is fixed from the back. This is the front view. So everything is tucked in nicely, you can't see from the front view. So with a back view, you can actually show that it is fairly clear how the installation of your electronic circuit is done. Likewise, on this same A3 loose sheet, I will need you to draw the circuit diagram, which is very simple. So over here, let me just briefly explain. This is the electronic circuit symbol for power supply, and this is a direct current DC power supply of 3 volts. So this is the actual physical holder. You don't draw the holder, but the button cell which is inside. So you need to indicate 3 volts here, so we know the voltage of the power supply. This is a typical circuit symbol for a switch, whether it is a rocker switch, a slide switch, or even sometimes, alright, a simple switch. So for us, it's actually over here, alright, on the button cell holder is actually a slide switch. So to represent that on the circuit diagram here, alright, let it focus for a while. There you see, this is how you sketch the switch. And this last third component here represents your slow blinking light emitting diode, LED in short. So you have to be careful. You need to sketch this symbol with a pair of parallel arrows coming up from the triangular area here. So it represents the light rays emitting, coming out from the device. So of course, it represents this output device called your slow blinking LED. In my video on soldering, you also notice that I mentioned about fixed value resistor, such as this circuit symbol here, or we call it a limiting resistor. What it does is, for normal standard LEDs, those that emit, for example, just green or red or yellow, all right, perhaps in your applied learning program robotics, ALP, you may have come across lighting up the LED. So then you will need a limiting resistor to control or limit the amount of current flowing through your standard or normal LED. Otherwise, too much current passing through your LED will become very hot, and of course eventually it will fuse, meaning it will basically blow, but it will not explode. Okay, you can no longer use the LED anymore. However, for our slow blinking LED for your project, it has a higher voltage rating, and therefore you do not need a limiting resistor there. So how do I start, you might ask? Okay, this is for your loose A3 sheet that you have actually collected in the last lesson, and is to be done as your weekend homework this weekend, to be submitted next Monday. So this is what you need to do. For instance, the contextual use shows how your toy display stand is being used, so to speak. So there's a hand placing a toy aeroplane, all right, on top of the platform. So it shows a user from the point of view of a hand, either reaching out to pick up the aeroplane or to place the small toy or figurine. And this little light ray shows that your LED is actually turned on. So this is the back view, which this window is quite wide. You can actually see the aeroplane. So for my case, this is the red color pencil that I use. So over here, what you do is you shade lightly, or rather now what you're doing, you're coloring. You're filling up this first square on the left with a similar tone, all right, but it has to be light. So to speed things up, I'm just going to leave it like that. Medium pressure, with the same red color pencil, all right, perhaps in the same direction. So what you do now is you can practice either two ways. You do the same as your light pressure, a similar tone, and then what you do is you run a second time, or even a third time, but not so dark, all right, because down here you need it to be heavy pressure. Okay, or what you can do is, when you first color this middle square, you actually apply a little bit more pressure than the one for the light pressure. Okay, so you can tell that the tone is somewhat darker, for example. Okay, like this. Okay, you can see the difference. Last but not least, with the same red color pencil, for my case, yours will be of a different choice. You can apply a much heavier pressure. Pardon me here, because there's a gap here. All right. So what you do is you apply a heavier pressure than medium pressure, and you should be able to demonstrate the tone to be much darker than the medium, than the light. Okay, so you can tell from this video here, this is how it's done. So once you warm up, all right, you will sketch or draw your own toy display stand. Then you add in the small toy or the figurine, which I'll show you later how you go about warming up and trying to find the right perspective to put. And of course, in the previous contextual use video, I mentioned that you use your master hand and you look at your left other hand, and then you sketch how it looks like. Okay, typically trying to hold something between your thumb and your index finger. Okay, it can be this way, it can be hanging, all right, it can be this way, all right, if you want to place your figurine on the platform. So it depends on the orientation and the kind of small toy or figurine that you have. Now you notice that for this previous sketch that I've done, I actually drew the outline using pencil. Okay, so what it means here is that I did not use a tracing paper, trace the original toy display, place it underneath and use the color of my choice and use that color pencil to outline. So that's why these are all pencil lines. Okay, and you do see some of the fine little guidelines here and there. So over here, same thing, you can see the isometric axis, all right, the vertical and the two slant lines across. And you can see that this is actually a pencil line, all right, over here. The pencil line is over here. So it is okay for you to present your contextual use like so, because I may not wish you, but you can, all right, I do not wish you to use the tracing paper and rest it below and then you come up with it. But nothing is stopping you from trying out and improving your rendering skills, okay? So I leave it to you as a choice, whether you use your pencil to straight away draw the outline of your toy display, or in your journal, all right, I think probably at the back you have your tracing paper temporarily pasted using masking tape. So you remove the tracing paper from your journal, place it underneath, over here actually, all right, and then you trace it. Now last but not least, in the last rendering tips video, you saw that, or rather the contextual use short video, you saw that I actually sketched the top view or the plan, PLAN, of my toy aeroplane, all right? And I quickly came up with a three-dimensional view, which is isometric sketch of my aeroplane. And this aeroplane actually is how it's seated over here. Now, this A4 template given to you in your last lesson as well helps you look at your small figurine or your small toy that you have and sketch two-dimensional views first. So for example, with this little rectangle here, I can actually sketch my little aeroplane very quickly. I'm going to use pencil, all right? You can use color pencils, doesn't matter. So I'm just going to sketch very quickly to show you how it is done. Okay, just go for the detail. Just go for the main parts. You don't have to go for everything. It can go out a bit, all right? Because this rectangle is small scale and it may not fit exactly your toy figurine. So this is one. The next one, you can actually sketch the so-called side view, all right? Of course, you have to scale it down a little bit, and this is how it might look like, okay? Just a rough sketch, all right? Of course, you've got to spend time and detail it, and so, for example, this is it, okay? And then, of course, I mentioned in the previous contextual use video as well, come up with a front view. So this is how your front view might look like. The details will be different from the different perspective that you have. So this is where you see the propeller generally, and then you will see the undercarriage and the wheels of the aeroplane. So what I have is actually a top view, a side view. It can be right side view or left side view, and a front view, okay? If you want, there's also views such as the back view, okay? So we rarely draw so-called from the back of the object. Now, for tall objects, you can actually use this template. So you have to decide, all right, between this or that. So some of you will have something more round, okay? So in that case, you can actually sketch your round figurine, you know, you can add on the shape such as this. All right, I don't know what this might be, but maybe it should be a cute little animal, you know. So you can actually kind of like come up with a quick sketch of it, and then you see how you're going to place it over your platform here. So make use of this template that may help you, whether you have a standing figurine, a more squarish block kind, or simply, you know, something like a toy plane or a sports car, or even the human figurine, all right, like your Lego figures such as Batman, Superman, and so on. So, of course, I remember your class, all right, you have this very nice little hot dog bun. Some of you have a squishy burger, so probably your burger will be here. So you try to sketch out and see how your burger will look like in 3D view, and then you sketch it over your actual presentation of your contextual use. Okay, and let me repeat, this is the A3 loose sheet that you will have to complete this weekend. So if you don't have enough space, of course the back page will be there available for you. Try to do this because you need to submit this as well as this. You can chuck it inside your design journal and submit to Inter and Jezebel coming next Monday. Alright, pass it to them and they will account for your journals and I'll collect from them next Monday. That's it. Thank you.